Hello, I'm just going to go through the answers to section C of the 2021 paper, question 16a. So part 1 of the question says that currently the value for the variable word2 is hard-coded to silent. Modify the program so that it prompts the user to enter the second word and then assign whatever value the user enters to the variable word2. And it gives you a sample output in the question. So following the instructions from the question, we want to modify our program. So word2 is already hard-coded in here as silent. Instead of silent, I want to get input from the user. So I'm going to adjust this and I'm going to say input. And I'm going to put in a string, enter the second word. And a colon at the end. So just copy in exactly what they're asking and then run it and check that you get the same output from the sample code given in the question. So I press run, enter the first word. The first word given in the sample in the question sheet is listen. And the second word is silent. And that gives me the correct output as per question. So that's part 1 complete. So just put in your comments, hashtag answer to part 1. Part 2 of this question says if both words entered are anagrams, the program should display the first word followed by the phrase is an anagram of and then the second word. When the program is run, the output may look as follows, and it gives you some sample code to test your program on. So I want to change my output, so I'm going to change this print statement. Now I want my print statement, instead of saying yes, I want it to say the first word, which is the variable word1, lowercase, comma, your string is an anagram of, comma, word2, and run that. The first word given in the sample code is listen, the second word is silent, and it says listen is an anagram of silent, which is exactly the sample code given in the question. That's part 2 complete. So just pop in your comment, answer to part 2, making it easy for the examiner at all times. Part 3 of this question asked, extend the program so that the words entered are not anagrams of each other. The program displays the first word followed by the phrase is not an anagram of and then the second word. When the program runs, the output may look as follows, and it gives you some sample code there. So at the moment it's running and it says if the sorted word 1 is equal to the sorted word 2, print word 1 is an anagram of word 2. I'm just going to put in here else print, and it's going to be word 1, comma, my string is not an anagram of, and there should be a capital NOT, that's what I was just checking. Put in my comma, word 2, close my bracket. So if I run this now and I used the same test code that's in my question, which is list is the first word, second word is array, and it says list is not an anagram of array. Now I see I have a double space here, so I'm just going to go back, delete that space, just run it again to make sure it's perfect. Now it's perfect. I can just put in my comment here, answer to part 3. And that's parts 1, 2 and 3 complete. Part 4, the program currently treats the words as case sensitive. Modify the program so that the case of the words entered does not matter. When the program runs, the output may look as follows, and there's some test code there for you to check your answers. So there's a couple of ways of doing this. We could convert, the easiest thing is just to take in the input and convert it to either one case or the other. or you can do it in the if statement here. You can convert your words to one case or the other, so either upper or lower cases basically being what you're looking for. If you do it in here, so dot upper, open bracket, close bracket, and the same here, dot upper, that's for uppercase. That stands for when you run that and you put in your sample code, listen and silent, it converts them to uppercase and it decides whether or not they're anagrams. So it is working. The other way to do it then is, instead of putting it in here, dot upper, instead of converting the input as soon as it comes in, you can just convert it in the if statement. So rather than changing your input, so here it output as capital letter silent, capital letter listen, capital letter silent. But if we were to just do it in here, dot upper, open bracket, close bracket, and word 2, dot upper, it fixes the issue. And if I run that and I put in listen, silent, it again fixes the issue and it runs through the loop, decides whether or not it's an anagram, but it keeps the variable the same. So in the first example, the first way of answering it, you're changing the variable to uppercase and then it's outputting as uppercase, so it mightn't look as nice in your output, but otherwise it's still working and it's still fixing that problem. So either of those solutions are fine there. That is part 4. Part 5 says extend the program to use the function is anagram, and you can see here that you have a function is anagram on line 5 there, so it's already defined for us to determine whether or not the 2 words entered are anagrams of each other. You should not delete the code you wrote in previous parts. The program will now check if the words are anagrams of each other. When the program runs, the output may look as follows. So it checks twice. The program now checked twice if the words are anagrams of each other. So here we have defined a function, but we've never called that function at any stage. We've defined it and we haven't used it. Down here we have come up with another solution, which is to check if it's sorted, and it's an if statement and else statement. So if sorted word 1 equals sorted word 2, then they're anagrams of each other or not. What we're going to do here then is just put in our definition. So we're going to call it, so if is anagram, just make sure you spell it correctly, if is anagram, and it's the same argument again, basically, word 1 dot upper. So what am I passing into it here? I'm putting in word 1 dot upper, open bracket, close bracket for my conversion, comma from my definition here, word 2, passing in word 2 into it now, dot upper again, open bracket, close bracket from my definition, sorry, from my conversion, and then I'm going to close my brackets, 2 brackets open, so I'm going to close them all. So if that's the case, I want to in my colon and I want to print my word 1 is an anagram of word 2, and if that's not the case, it's the same as that I have above, and it's going to check twice, remember, so it's asking me to put it in again in my question. So word 1 comma my string is capital NOT, not an anagram of comma word 2, and close my bracket. And if I run that, enter the first word, and the first word given in the sample is listen, capital LISTEN. Second word is silent, SILENT, capital S, and listen is an anagram of silent, and that's printed out twice, which is exactly what they wanted. So that question 5 looked quite difficult, but all it was asking you to do was to actually use the definition that was already here. It was already set up and sorted. They had never actually used it in the question. They used a different method here. So now you just wanted to check if that was the case. You pass in your word 1, pass in your word 2, and then print your result, and else print your alternative result. and run it, and it should work. That is, again, just to put in your comments, ANS part B. Part 6, anagrams of the word can also be phrases. So the question says, for example, moon star is an anagram of astronomer, and voices rant is an anagram of the two words conversations and conversation. Note that the spaces in the phrases are ignored. Extend your program so that it prompts the user to enter a phrase. So that's just an input. The program should display 2 additional messages to say whether or not word 1 is an anagram of the phrase and whether or not word 2 is an anagram of the phrase. And there's some sample outputs shown in your question sheet. So I'm going to just give myself a bit of space here, and I'm going to just put in a comment to begin, and it's answer to part 6. Sorry. 6 should be IVI, and then I'm going to just start coding. So notice the first thing we need to do is to prompt the user to enter a phrase. So regardless of what else you understand in that, you can all do this part of it. So it's going to be phrase, as whatever variable you want to call it. So phrase equals, and it's an input, and it's a string. Please enter a phrase, or enter a phrase as it's given. It's actually given to you in the question. Enter a phrase. PHRASE : colon. Okay, so enter a phrase, and that's your input. Now, it does also say that note that the spaces are ignored. So if there's spaces in it, we want to take them out of it before we do anything else, just to make our code a little bit easier. So if I set up a variable here, say spaces or no spaces, whatever you want to call it. Say no spaces is the variable name, equals, and I'm going to use my dot replace. So I'm going to say phrases, which is from here, and I'm going to say dot replace, and it's the string space, comma, and I'm replacing it with nothing. So this one here has a space in between, and this one doesn't have anything. Okay, so I'm replacing that space with nothing. So that deletes the space for me. So now I want to check the rest of my question, and I'm just reading the question again. It says, prompts the user to enter a phrase. The program should display 2 additional messages to say whether word 1 is an anagram of the phrase and whether word 2 is an anagram of the phrase. So I'm going to pass word 1 and my no spaces into my function and see what's returned. And I'm going to do that twice. I'm going to do it with word 1 phrase and then word 2 phrase, or phrase no spaces, or whatever you've called it here. And that should be an E, there's no S. Okay, so if I say to the first thing here is I want to pass in my argument. So if, and it's the same as this if else here really, except I'm going to change the second half of it. Instead of word 2, it's going to be the no spaces. So the handiest thing to do would just be to copy that piece of code there, or I can type it out again. It doesn't really matter. I'll just type it out just for example. If is anagram, word 1 dot upper, upper, open bracket, close bracket, comma, and then the second argument I want to pass in is this one here, no spaces, my phrase with no spaces. So I've called it no underscore spaces, and close it and close my bracket. If that's the case, I want to print out print bracket word 1 comma is an anagram of So just going to continue on from the first video there. I just ran out of time. So I'm on this if statement here. If anagram of word 1 dot upper, no spaces. There should be a dot upper here as well. Open bracket, close bracket, that's just to convert it. And then I should have my colon at the end. And then I'm working on the print statement, which I had started. Word 1 is an anagram of phrase, and just close my bracket there. And then else, semicolon, I'm going to print word 1, comma, my string is not an anagram of, and then my phrase. And I need to do this twice for word 1 and then again for word 2. So I'm just going to copy that code. Just copy and paste it is the easiest thing to do. And then instead of word 1, it's going to be word 2. Word 2, word 2, and I'm just going to run it. So enter the first word, and the first piece of test code here is listen. I'm taking this from page 5, the test codes. And then the second one is silent. And then it says enter a phrase. And that's working perfectly. So I'm going to do a second test code. And it's conversation. This is the second block of code on page 5 in the test questions. So it gives you the test code, and it's conservation. So again, just make sure you're following the exact spellings following the lead from the exam paper. And that's working fine. And then it says voices rant on. And that's working perfect. And the third piece of test code given there as well, and you can just run it again to check that. And the phrase here is moon star. Sorry, it should be moon starer, but you can just run it again and pop in the words again. Sorry, I just hit enter too soon. And just press enter, and it tells you then the answers here, which is matching up with what's on page 5 of the exam papers. So that's it all. Thank you.